welcome to San Mateo County, as fresh as it gets. I'm joined today by David Page, owner of La Honda Winery. Thank you for being here, David.
Well, thanks for having us.
This is going to be a day about beverages in San Mateo County. So I thought the first thing we do, David, is show you a little clip we took up at Thomas Fogarty Winery.
Great.
We are at the spectacular Thomas Fogarty Winery, and I'm here with Tommy Fogarty. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you for coming up.
First thing I thought of when we came up here, of course, is that wine is good for the heart. We all know that, but that has a particular importance in this case, doesn't it?
I suppose, yeah. Michael Martella and my father founded the winery about 33 years ago. My father was a cardiac surgeon, and he also invented a whole bunch of medical devices, but a few of which were among the first devices made that were used for unclogging arteries. So, yeah, that is kind of funny.
So you've grown up in the business, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I was about 10 years old when they started planting these vineyards, so yes.
Now, how many acres do you have altogether?
Well, there's over 300 acres total up here, all of which is in an open space easement, so we're not developing it. It's agricultural land, but we've got at the moment 30 acres under vine up here, most of which is Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, a teeny tiny little half acre of Nebbiolo that we're also experimenting with.
So what are we seeing behind us? What are these vines?
This exact vineyard is the Albatom Chardonnay vineyard. It was planted in 1981. It's our smallest Chardonnay vineyard. It's about a half an acre. We don't even do single vineyard wine from it every year, but in particularly interesting years where the vineyards are sort of expressing themselves in unique ways, we'll do single vineyard bottlings. And this is one of our most sought after because we make usually under 50 cases of it.
So how long does it take, start to finish? I mean, from the time the vines, when you cut them back, I assume in the winter, or how does it work?
Well, as you can see right now, not too long ago, we had bud break, which is the very first, display of any green that the plant shows all year when the weather warms up. And then it begins to leaf out and you get foliar development. And really in a few weeks, we've got quite a bit of foliar development this year. It's been a kind of a, spring came in like a lion this year, as they say. So as long as we don't get any cool weather or a lot of moisture, we're looking good for 2013.
So when will the grapes be ready to harvest?
This vineyard, and where we are in these Santa Cruz Mountains, things may not ripen quite as consistently as they do in warmer weather areas with more predictable weather like Napa and Sonoma, but this could be ready anytime from late September through most of October, actually. Okay,
and then how long to actually make the wine from the grapes?
Well, that's the way we do it. The Chardonnays actually we'll see about 14 months in oak, and that's not a hard and fast rule, but that's kind of typical. And then from then we bottle age our Chardonnays quite a bit. The fruit up here is very high in acidity, naturally coming out of these vineyards, small berries, very cold weather, which makes for a very lean kind of structured Chardonnay, and it actually needs some bottle age. So for instance, right now 2009 is our current release, and it's 2013, so we bottle age for quite a while.
And you do it all on site here, do you not? And do you oversee that as well? Are you the chief winemaker?
No. Nathan Candler's our winemaker. Michael Martella, the founding winemaker, is still here. He mostly focuses on the viticulture, the vineyard end of it now. Nathan makes the wines. He's fantastic. He's been here 10 years, so he knows what we have done. He has a vision of what we want to do. Like all businesses or artistic endeavors or agricultural endeavors, things kind of evolve and develop and go in new directions. And right now we're kind of in a new horizon where we're going to continue doing what we've always done, which is estate grown, kind of, very, very site expressive, austere wines. And we're refining that, and after 30 years, we're kind of getting the hang of it.
And the Santa Cruz appellation is becoming a much better known name, isn't it? What's that all about?
We've been kind of wondering why that hasn't happened now for about 3 decades, and in the last couple of years, it's getting real recognition. The wine industry in California is a big deal.
Yes.
And the Santa Cruz Mountains is a small appellation. There's not a lot of wine made here. What wine that is made here tends to be fairly expensive and it's fairly sought after. So it's sort of been, I wouldn't say it's been neglected by like the mainstream press and the very at-large wine media, but it's really starting to get more attention than ever now. It's kind of like people have, they're running out of other stuff to talk about, so they're being forced into these really small, maybe difficult to understand regions.
Right, and they're appreciating it now.
Yep, yeah, we're really happy about it. And there's also a general kind of shift in taste in the United States. People are getting back to sort of old world or more traditionally made wines, which, you know, is great with us because we don't have any other way to do it.
Now, you have a tasting room.
Yeah, we do.
And when is that available to people?
It's actually open every day but Tuesday now.
Okay.
And our hours kind of change seasonally, closing at 6 or 5, depending on what time of year it is. But it's really a fantastic place. It's a lot of fun. We have a great staff.
It is fun.
Beautiful view.
Now, talking about your wines, which ones have won the top awards? I know you have so many awards, but...
Our Pinot Noir, and our Appellation Blend Pinot Noir, which is a blend of the estate Pinot Noir vineyards and some other vineyards located in the Santa Cruz Mountain Appellation, that does extremely well. And that's a wine we make enough of that it's available sort of in the market, you know, in restaurants and in stores and stuff. And the wines that just do like amazingly well and have become sort of generally regarded as on the same level as any other wine that's made anywhere, any other Pinot Noir made anywhere on the planet really, are the single vineyard Pinot Noirs, and those are available through our wine club and through the tasting room occasionally. We'll sort of introduce them usually sometime in the late spring, and then they last a few months, and then they're gone until the next year.
And now with this spectacular vista, you do special events as well here, don't you?
We do. We do weddings and a lot of corporate stuff, all kinds of team building and product launches, and you know, we even do artist expos for musicians. We have a lot of neat stuff going on in our events department.
So what's to you is the most rewarding part of this business? I mean, you've grown up in it.
Yeah, the most rewarding part of the business probably is when I get to go somewhere like across the planet, like Korea or Hong Kong or Poland or something like that, and people are there, and when I get there, they have my wine, you know, and they're really appreciating it, thousands of miles away, and I get to go there and talk to them about how it's made. That still is like a kind of a moving thing for me, actually.
And you are targeting Asia. I know we had some Chinese food and wine people in, and they were loving the wine, and it's my understanding you are marketing it in Asia increasingly, are you not?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the fact that there's money in Asia and people are really appreciating wine. It's a kind of an emerging market, and it may not have the potential people are hoping it has, but it has a lot of potential.
Do you have any idea in terms of looking at all of your wine production, how much is consumed in California versus outside?
Well, we make about 11,000 cases of wine a year on average, and that can vary quite a bit. It can vary 2,000 or 3,000 cases either direction. We're slaves to the vintage because we're all estate vineyards. But we sell about half of it direct through our tasting room and our wine club. And of that half, about 80% is in California. And the other 5,500 or so, about half of it leaves California and half of it stays.
Right. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for being with us. And I can imagine enjoying this every day. You're very lucky.
I feel lucky.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
So you've seen Thomas Fogarty Winery. I'm sure you've been there yourself.
I have.
How does that differ from La Honda Winery?
Well, it's a beautiful spot, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And so's La Honda. La Honda's actually just behind Thomas Fogarty. And it's another beautiful town with great tall redwoods, views of, in fact, the Pacific as well as the Bay. And so, yeah, it's an enchanting place. And so we were first founded up there. We still have some vineyards up there. Our first wines were made up there. But then about, 8 or 9 years ago, we decided it would be good to move down the hill and be an urban winery, and actually be really close to our community, even closer to our employees and people that we want to share time with.
So that explains why it's called La Honda,
Indeed,
but you're actually headquartered or located in Redwood City.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we figured out that we only have to carry a bunch of grapes once a year to the winery, so why not put the winery where we want it to be rather than right next to the vineyards, particularly because we've actually got something like 42 vineyards now.
Wow.
Both up in La Honda, but also up here and closer to Woodside and even Hillsborough, and then right the way down the southern kind of end of the mountain range in Saratoga and Los Gatos.
Wow, so you have them all over.
Yeah.
And what about you personally? How did you get involved in the wine business?
Well, my father was in the wine business. Yeah, he would, I think, be somewhat proud of me, but primarily because he was in the business for 40 years and he passed away just before I got back into the wine business. Wow. Just a few years ago, I got into business with Ken Warnick, who is the founder of our company, a guy I'm sure you know well.
Yes, I do.
Very much a kind of a local character and a local kind of leader of the industry here locally. And he started managing vineyards locally 20 plus years ago. And there's, as you know, some just stunning vineyards in the area.
Yes.
And some of the vineyards we look after are 40, 50, 60 years old. And they hail back to a time when Silicon Valley was actually dotted with vineyards up and down, way before kind of, you know, the Facebooks and the Apples. It was fields and fields of vineyards.
.vineyard as opposed to .com,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, well said.
Exactly.
So he started managing these vineyards, and after a while, the vineyard owners said, well, you seem to do a fantastic job at this, but can you now please make our wine for us? And that was basically his start into winemaking as well as vineyard management. And having done that successfully for a while, he looked for some partners, and that's how I got involved, and also how Colin McNanny, who's now our head winemaker, got involved. So it's the three kind of musketeers, basically.
I see. So I've been to the winery, and the stonework is absolutely spectacular inside.
Well, thank you.
And the whole facility is amazing. What is the story behind that? Why that location in Redwood City? People think they're going to the wrong place initially, right?
That's right. Well, it was the first time we found a warehouse, essentially, that was sufficiently sized, and the dimensions were such that we could really do exactly what we wanted, both for winemaking but also for the event and community space that we wanted to have there. So we have just a fantastically kind of proportioned crush pad and fermentation area and barrel rooms and case storage rooms, but we also have this just beautiful kind of, what is it, 35, 40 foot high ceilings and you know, a 200 foot long grand hall.
Yes.
And so we've set up the bar and the gallery around that, and also, as you said, mentioned, you know, filled it up with stone and wood and all sorts of things, so that when you walk through the door, you really feel like you've been transported back to wine country, even though you just stepped off a sidewalk in Redwood City.
Yes.
So we have a lot of fun with that, and it's great to see people's like kind of surprise slash elation when they walk through the door. And we have all just a huge variety of events there. We sometimes have small, intimate dinners with 20, 25 people, but typically it's, again, the Facebooks, the Apples, the EAs, the Oracles coming down there and using the space extensively because it's right on their doorstep.
Yes.
And it means that they can have a really fun day where they're either having a holiday party or they're having a team building event or they're doing whatever. So yeah, we have a lot of fun there. It's great.
So, David, will you tell us a little bit about your wines?
Sure. We have 8 wines. The 42 vineyards that we manage, being dotted so far along the Santa Cruz Mountains, means we have just a huge range of terroir. So vineyards up here in the north, which are just perfect for Chardonnay. They have enough temperature but enough cooling influence from both the bay and the maritime layers to really drive excellent flavours through Chardonnay. And then up on the hills, up in La Honda itself, perfect places for Pinot. Pinot vineyards up there are, you know, world class and well known. And then further south, down towards Saratoga and Los Gatos, we have perfect place to be growing Cabernet and Syrah and other varietals that need a little bit more intense heat and perhaps some kind of slightly rougher, rockier soils. So with that variety, we're able to do pretty much everything. So we have a Sauvignon Blanc, we have a Chardonnay, we have a Pinot. We're just about to come on with a Zinfandel. We have a red blend. We have 3 Cabernets. We just have this, you know.
Keeps you busy.
It does, and it makes it unusual because most people expect to kind of go to a winery and see, you know, 40, 50 acres of rolling fields outside the front door, whereas, you know, we have semi-industrial neighbours. But it's right on their doorstep. They get through the door and they realise, okay, these guys have got wines that are actually, you know, meant to be grown in these areas. A lot of wineries have to put up with trying to grow 4 or 5 different types of wine on ground that's actually only suitable for one.
So David, what about, you mentioned Hillsborough, that intrigues me. Do you have vineyards near Hillsborough? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
And what type of grapes are those?
Well, there's two that's Pinot and one that's a Chardonnay. And yeah, there's the kind of the northern end of that that area, even up to Atherton or north of Atherton, and right down that side of the 280. There's some very, very beautiful vineyards. As you know, there's some just fantastic estates that are sumptuous and kind of, you know, some of the most valuable property on the planet. And it's those very same kind of villages and hamlets with you know, beautifully kind of kept lands and lawns that we host some of these vineyards.
So you do host them. That was my next question. Obviously, you don't own them all. Do you tend to go in? Is it that Ken goes in and landscapes them or builds a vineyard and then talks to the owner, or does the owner approach you about taking the grapes, or how does that work?
Well, typically it's a vineyard that we've been managing for many years.
Oh, I see.
But yes, we're also building some vineyards. So this last winter, for example, we built 1.5 acre size vineyard in Los Altos Hills. A gentleman had bought a property. He was building himself a home. There are several acres there. He effectively has a kind of a landscaping problem, if you like. What to do with all this land, how to make the most of the property, how to make the property feel natural and you know, a kind of a gentle place to be. And we have not just a solution to that, but also a desire to grow grapes on what is perfect soils, you know, with full exposure to the sun and some of the best soils in the area. So yeah, it's a kind of a partnership, if you like. He wants some fantastic you know, beauty on his land, and we want some vines, and so we work together and sort that out. So yeah, we're building vineyards as well as managing kind of pre-existing and kind of semi-historic vineyards.
So no doubt you get a lot of wine experts who come in. What about people who are not experts about wine?
Well, I think that's the more fun. I mean, my father was in the business for 40 years, kept on saying that, you know, his favorite word for wine was drinkable, and that if wine was really good, that was almost his highest praise for it. And I think that speaks to some of the simplicity that we should all try and approach wine. It should be about what you enjoy, rather than what you know. It should be about what your impressions are rather than what somebody tells you they are. And so, even though in the winery we you know, have trained well, we know what we're talking about, we always try and keep it simple, and try and focus on, well, if you can scent something, tell us what it is. You know,
that's good.
Don't let us tell you what it is you're about to taste and enjoy. So yeah, we have as much fun as we can and keep it as relaxed as possible.
What about wine tastings? I know you're not open to the public every day for that, is that right?
We're not, no. Primarily because we're doing so many events, and there's the strong demand for people, both corporations and individuals, who want to have parties there and the like. But when we are open to the public, it's typically once a month, the third Saturday of each month. It's great because the whole community gets back together, comes through the door, and says, "Oh, I always wanted to look in here. I always wanted to see this. I always wanted to taste your wines. I saw that vineyard on that." You know, up in that estate on the corner of the hill, and so they get to kind of come in and you know, really feel part of it. So
that's great. Well, David, I love your enthusiasm and your passion for what you do, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
And now we're going to take a look at some beer brewing.
Perfect.
We've been telling you all about local wines that are as fresh as it gets. Now we'd like to tell you a little bit about locally made beer. We're here at the Half Moon Bay Brewing Company in Half Moon Bay with Brewmaster James Costa. James, thank you so much for having us here today.
Thanks for being here.
And I understand you're in the middle of canning your beer even as we sit here.
There's some canning going on right now as we speak.
So how long has the brewing company been making beer?
We've been here for 10 years.
10 years. And I think that a lot of this is newer.
This building here is a newer building, yes. And the restaurant here and this old building, I believe, has been here for 40 years or more.
Right. So tell us about the beer making process. I think when you started out, you probably didn't have as many beers as now. Is that right? Did you?
Yeah, I think they had about 6 beers on tap when they started out here. And now these days we're up to 10, more than 10 beers.
More than 10?
Yeah.
And with the volume that you produce, are you selling to other restaurants, or are you?
We do a little bit of outside sales. Generally, 90% of our beer goes across the tap here.
Oh, 90% goes across the tap here. Interesting. And you have something that's become a bit of an international phenomenon during the presidential elections, do you not?
Yeah, they did. Well, they did some presidential elect ales, so they even had a little contest on who was going to win. They had a Mitt Romney beer and also an Obama beer. So they had a couple different labels for them, and whoever won the presidential election, then they turned it into the Obama beer, and that's we did some labels for it, and we did some bottles and things like that.
And I understand you sold a lot of that, and people would choose. It was actually the identical beer, wasn't it? Just with a different label.
You got it. That's what it was. Yeah, it was very popular.
Good. So we'll have a little film of it in a few minutes, but will you tell us about how the process works? I don't think many people have actually seen beer being made.
Well, generally, you know, all beer starts in the mash tun. So we mix malt and water together, 2-row barley, some specialty malts, some caramels and some crystal malts, and sometimes roasted malts to make darker beers. That's where the process begins. And then it goes from the mash tun to the brew kettle, and that's where the hops are added. So after the hops are added, we usually boil for around 60 minutes in time, depending on how bitter or how hoppy we want the beer. Sometimes we use very low levels of hops, obviously, to make lighter beers. And then the beer is moved from the brew kettle through a heat exchanger into a fermentation tank so that we can set the temperature of the yeast so that it doesn't make any undesirable off flavors.
So how long does it take from beginning to end to actually make a beer?
It's generally 14 days for a batch of ales. And that's what we make here. We've made a few lagers, and those usually take about 21 to 24 days,
wow.
But we don't make a lot of those here.
So people sit there with a mug waiting for the 14th day at the end of the cycle?
They absolutely do. They are always asking what's coming next. That's the important question. So
now why are you canning in addition to bottling now?
Well, we've come out with a new line of beers. It's a Maverick Session Ale. Oh. So that's we're kind of shooting more for a target demographic of more active people, active lifestyles, so that we can you know, get the cans out there. It's a smaller package than the 22-ounce bottle, and you know, we're looking forward to selling a lot of the cans.
And you sell kegs as well, I believe, right?
Yes, we do.
And
yes.
Something else? It's a growler.
Yes, you can buy growlers at the bar. That's a 1-gallon fill. It's those are very popular. I think it's somewhere around $16 for a growler filled. And then we also have a special on Mondays. I think it's $9 to get your growler filled.
So you've also developed something with beer and food pairings, is that right? In the restaurant, I know they do that.
Yes, every item on our menu has a suggested beer pairing on it, so that people can get an idea of you know, what might taste good with the seafood selections or the spicier, you know, pork style selections or things like that.
So how is that supposed to work? I mean, I've heard about it with chocolate, it's a heavier beer, is that right? Or a more bitter beer? What are you supposed to pair with?
Yes, stouts and things like that go a lot better with you know, chocolates and you know, dark kind of dark fruits and things like that. You know, spicy foods go better with like IPAs and things like that. And then, you know, barbecued style foods, a little more of the roasty kind of flavors go well with like the red style beers and the amber beers.
So you help them out by suggesting pairings, which is nice.
Yeah, well, that's you know, the trick is that the beer is actually pretty easy pair with food. It really goes well with food. It's a lot easier to pair with than wine is.
That's because you're a brewmaster, that's why.
Oh, even the wine guys will tell you that. Yeah, absolutely.
So I know it's a very green establishment, and I think when you're through processing the beer, you don't waste a lot. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. All the spent grains that we use go to a local farmer to feed their pigs.
Wow. And does that make the pigs very happy, very hoppy?
It does make them very happy. It's really, really fine malt that we use, so it's really, really great feed.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, James, and we're going to take a walk through and see how the process works.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All the process starts here in the mash tun, and then it actually gets milled. You can see the big white tube up top there. It gets milled on the other side of the building here, and then it gets put over here in the grist case, and then it drops here in the mash tun where we mix it with hot water. And basically we're shooting for a certain temperature so that we can change the starches over in the grain to sugars, fermentable sugars. That happens between 148 and 158 degrees. And we usually let it sit in there for about 60 minutes. That really gets conversion going. And then we strain it off like a tea. We put hot water over the top, and the sugars trickle down through all the grain, and then we collect it over there in the kettle. And once we collect it over there in the kettle, that's where we add the hops. Like I said before, hops are kind of like salt in soup. So if you add salt right at the beginning, you're going to get very salty soup. So if you add hops kind of in the middle, you get more flavor. And if you add hops at the end, you'll get a little more aromatics from the salt and a little less flavor.
Makes a lot of sense.
Hops are a lot in that same way. So we chill that as fast as we can run it out of the kettle over there. It usually takes about 30 minutes, and then we run it through the heat exchangers, and then we put it over here into the fermenters. And that's what all these temperature controllers are. We try to pitch at a certain temperature, planning on a certain flavor profile for the beer. And once that happens, you can see the bucket here that's bubbling. That's basically one cell of yeast eating one cell of sugar, making one cell of alcohol and one cell of CO2. And so fermentation takes about 7 days to complete. And then these tanks are glycol jacketed also. And then after 7 days, we'll turn the temperatures down. And you can feel some of these are really freezing cold, and that gets the yeast to settle in these cones. And then we can re-harvest the yeast out of the cones, and we can reuse the yeast probably about 10 times. So after 7 days of this sitting chilled, then we move them all over. There's a bright beer room over there, and that's we only use a natural form of filtration. We don't use mechanical filtration.